G'day YouTube, warbles on a lot here. Look at that, rills, runoff. Total of 7 millimeters Friday evening, and another 12 millimeters Friday night, and a millimeter on Saturday. So we come up to 20 millimeters all told. So the trees that have managed to survive are still alive and they're rejoicing, and the trees that have succumbed to the drought are still dead, and I don't know how many of them will have a go at epicormal regeneration this spring, because a lot of trees that had a go at epicormal regeneration when it rained last year in spring succumbed when the rain stopped. So tomorrow I'll see if I can get a fire permit and burn around the clearing while it's wet enough to do so safely, while you can still walk around without breaking dry leaves underfoot. If I can get the paperwork through before it dries out again, because today's Sunday and they reckon we're going to be back to 30, 33 degree temperatures by Wednesday. I really should be trying to burn this afternoon, but I didn't realise that we were going to get as much water as we did get. So anyway, I'm back to playing with fire hoses today. Today I'm playing with the Stortz-Fittings on the Chinesium 25mm nylon line canvas lay flats. Here's my issue. 30 metres of hose with fittings, $59. Delivered in the box, okay? Whereas a pair of actual genuine made in Germany Stortz 25mm hose tails, $27.42 at per each, $54.84 for a pair of them. So clearly, obviously, corners have been cut, and one particular corner is this. When you got proper fair income German Stortz-Fittings, those rubbers are thick enough that they put pressure on the cams or lugs working in their tracks, and it takes quite a bit of effort to put them together. These little ones, you can do it with your fingers on the bare metal. Anything bigger than 25 mils, there's enough pressure in there on the dry joint of the rubber to rubber that you can get spanners, and the big ones you have to use spanners. Whereas the Chinese Stortz-Fittings, line them up, loose as a goose. All 6 of them, exactly the same. When you put a Chinesium up against a German Stortz-Fitting, it's about twice as tight as Chinese, or 3 times, yeah, 2.5 times as tight as Chinese to Chinese. But nothing like as secure as the real German thing. So the attempted cure is to throw half a dozen proper German Stortz rubbers at the situation, hoping that by being just a little bit thicker, they'll make the lugs lock up in the approved fashion. And therein lieth the difference. On the left, we see the Chinesium that came out of it. On the right, we see the German that's going into it. And I would say there may perhaps be a 1/2 millimetre of difference. But that's what I hope to make the difference. And it's only $1.71 per rubber. But it certainly makes a difference when stacked up side by side. Here's a funny thing about proper Stortz-Fittings. When they're locked up, you can't rotate the hose against the fitting. When they're apart, you can rotate the hose. Totally free to spin. And the way that is achieved is in there's a circlip which holds the hose tail captive, and it protects the water sealing metal to metal surface in there. So when you use a proper Stortz hose tail, whereas with the Chinesium version, yeah, it's free to rotate all right because there's no circlip in there. You can see hose tail in there, and the whole thing is literally as loose as a goose. So what I'm going to try to do, you can hear it, it's rough cast in there. I don't think they've machined any flat surface in there. So the only thing holding that hose tail in place is the hose that's wired on. From having played with it, I already know that this hose leaks at one end. This hose leaks at both ends. And I haven't yet tested this one to see how badly it leaks. So even though I'm fully aware that these are designed to be a dry seal joint, and you're not supposed to lubricate the rubber because the rubber will cling to any dust that it meets, and the dust will then erode the rubber and bugger the seal. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I do indeed put just a little bit of petroleum jelly, aka Vaseline, not onto the rubbers, but onto the mating surfaces of the lugs. Just a little bit, so the inner metal contact surfaces have got a little bit of lubrication. Because the greasier, the easier. Ask any brothel keeper. They don't use Vaseline anymore, but they give away KY jelly with the rations. Or so I've heard tell. And the theory here is to try and get just a little bit of lubrication down in there. And on the one hand, having a hydrocarbon grease in there may improve the seal, and on the other hand, any dust that gets trapped in there is going to act a little bit like valve grinding paste, and it'll gradually lap the surfaces both against each other until they do fit watertight under pressure. So to minimise the chance of getting Vaseline on the rubbers, I'm going to do this before I put the new rubbers in. And there you go. A German rubbered Chinesium Stortz-Fitting with its faces lubricated with Australian black and gold petroleum jelly. And now they are in fact just as tight as the German ones. Now, why couldn't the Chinaman make a decent rubber grommet which would allow to connect to each other, joined up together? So you can get 90 metres out of 3 hoses. And for all that inconvenience, the customer has to go and retrofit $10 worth of retail level replacement grommets. How much did the production engineer actually save with the decision to do that? And how much international damage did they do to China's reputation as a supplier? In China, these things probably cost 1/10 of a cent, and the proper ones would probably cost them maybe 20 cents to use different material and a different mould and make it so that it was at least the right shape and the right size. I couldn't be bothered. As for the business of the missing circlip, well, yeah, fair enough. That's a production engineering decision based on the idea that these hoses are designed to sit in a suburban factory or public building and only get used to fight one fire once while waiting for the fire brigade to show up. And if it leaks just a little bit around here and around here, it doesn't actually matter to them. To me, it matters. Because last time when I tried one of the Chinesium hoses, it leaked right here where I stand to operate the pump and where I walk. So to me, yeah, it matters that the Chinesiums leak, and it matters that they should be able to withstand sharp rocks and pointy sticks. And that's why in the pipeline I've ordered 2 30-metre rolls of 25mm Australian canvas percolating hose, slightly shop soiled at only $3.30 per metre, so they're $100 each. And 1 20-metre roll of brand new shiny stuff, and that's $5.50 a metre, and that's all plus GST, so add 10% to all that, and then add 40-something dollars for the freight. And each one of those hoses will consume near enough to $55 worth of Stortz-Fittings on each end, and the new ones won't leak, and the old ones will be relegated with their new rubbers, which hopefully won't leak, and with the Vaseline, which hopefully will help the leaks. They'll be relegated just to sprinkling. I won't ever be trying to move those canvas hoses full of water over the rocks, because they're only going to be sprinkly hoses because they're El Cheapo, and they may not be as robust as the proper stuff, which can handle 800 psi absolute burst pressure. So we'll give the system a test first with the hose which had a leak at one end, but I don't know which end. I guess if I haven't fixed the problem, then time will tell. It leaks. It runs away. This end does not leak, but the tripod does not like full pump pressure, obviously. So we'll try the sled with its Warble's modified additional polypipe feet sockets, which enable you to level the sled on sloping ground. At the end of the hose with 2 leaks, plus the hose with 1 leak. Both Chinesiums are leaking. $60 litres a minute. 60 metres away from the pump. Jump forward a couple of hours to recharge the phone's battery. This morning's sled watering reached out 15 metres radius from here with the sled on the ground, so we'll go out another 30 metres or so, and this time we have the sled cranked up on the tripod of star pickets, roughly chin high. So Okay, both of them are leaking. And this video's run over time. However, since last time I tried to put up a long video, I have verified my account, so maybe perhaps I'll be able to upload it. Anyway, as a self-starter, this thing's lifted itself off one end of the star pickets. So I'll have to go and back valve it and come and have a look. And as well as that, this third hose has got holes in it. Which is not a happy making thing to discover. And yeah, its top joint leaks as well. Okay, well, I just got wetted down. Okay, first indications of water on the ground. Outside the well-watered area. Some water getting on the ground. So from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And that was on the downhill side of the setup. Since rectified and rendered horizontal. And I'll try a slightly different line on the hose. And I will also open the valve a little bit slower. One thing which does occur to me is that with the sprinkler set up horizontal as such, you don't go quite so far up the hill. Perhaps finding a relative flat spot to put the tripod was a mistake. So just for the fun of it, I'll set this thing up so that its vertical axis is perpendicular to the slope of the lie of the land by putting it there instead of there on the flat spot where it did used to be. This is going to be quite a good test of the hypothesis that, having verified my channel in order to prove I wasn't a robot, because they wouldn't let me upload the second last video I tried to post, I may now be permitted to go beyond 15 minutes and 30 seconds. If I am, this goes up. If I'm not, this gets deleted, and who gives a shit? Got to test the system sometime. I'm off to the pump. You wait there. There you go. So you don't point quite so high over the falling ground. And you effectively aim off. When you're going up over the higher country. That seems to work pretty well. I like that. Anyway, I'm going to go out there and get a few photos so you can watch. Give you some idea of scale. How else do you give your lens a clear view, huh? 4 pinholes marked. But I think probably the best thing to do is cut that end off the hose. It can be a 25 metre length. And to prevent this bloody wet spot in front of the pump, what I think I'll probably do is replace this Chinesium with a proper actual Stortz fitting. That's what I'll do. And now we drain the hose and I empty it all, put this stuff to bed. There you go, try again without water on the lens. Wow, you can actually see what's going on. "90 metres of 25mm hose, that's 50 litres of water. Just in the hose. And to move these canvas hoses any distance across country like this, yeah, you got to empty them. And gravity helps with that. And of course, the not so minor point that you can pull on it and tug on it and drag it across the country without being in any greatly huge particular risk of it being cut by a rock or spiked by a stick. That is in fact exactly why my three-way adjustable hose nozzle is on the 25mm fire reel hose, whereas the cheapies, they go on the canvas lay flats on the secondary water outputs. Okay, well, that'll probably do more or less for one video. Bloody tree. Okay, turn the fuel off. Is to dip the measuring stick down, and we see we're on 37.5 centimetres of water at 93.8 litres to the centimetre. So the testing I did on the 10th of October, discovering its flow rates of 40 and 60 litres per minute at full throttle and full valve versus full throttle and half valve, which used 1423 litres. Today I used 1266 litres, so there's 3611 litres in the pool. So I need to shift about 2700 litres up the hill. But that, I think, will be for another video. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ginger beer, here's cheer. Arr. And to those of you who've been wondering how I come to be able to afford all this fire protection, I say unto ye, surprising what you can afford when you stop buying beer. And when your car loan's been paid off for a year or so and your daughter pays back the money you've been spending on the storage container for her flat that's been packed up for over a year when she started to drive around Australia. And when you cut off your landline so you haven't got to pay to rent a phone you don't use. And when you live out in the residential non-urban failed farmland where the rates are sort of about a quarter to a third of what they are in town on a quarter acre, only I'm out here on 100 acres. So yeah, and even has spare money to feed the wildlife, as well as prepare to fight fire. What would the world come to if everybody thought like I do? If all the world thought like I do, I'd be mad to think anything else. Surely. Quod erat demonstrandum. This was to be proved. You can't rely on Chinesium cheapy fire hoses. Even if you do replace the shitty undersized rubbers on the Stortz-Fittings, the Chinese fittings lacking their little wire or spring steel circlip will leak. Pretty much every fitting will leak. And 1 out of 3 hoses has 4 pinholes in it, straight out of the box, never been used. That's why you don't pay $1 a metre. Whoops, $2 a metre. $59 for 30 metre rolls. Yeah, when the proper stuff, cheapest you can get, is $5.50 a metre plus GST, and that's without hose fittings. Funny that, isn't it? Hey? That's the way the world works. As I said, this one video is going to be a really good test of whether my having verified the channel means I can upload more than 15 minutes, which I have not been able to do for about 4 years, maybe 5. You're a funny little lady, Mrs. Bowerbird. Not many video cameras you can hold on full telephoto with one hand while smoking a pipe with the other. Anyway, the extended play version. Warbles, what I like to YouTube. Ciao.